Okay, and here we go. We're going to talk about the history of electronic cigarettes, pretty much from the beginning when it started in the year 2000. That's right, it's been around for pretty much well over a decade now, to where we are in present times and see the progression. Hang in there, folks. I know that this might be a bit of a longer video, but hopefully you walk away knowing quite a bit more and understanding what everything does and what it is with electronic cigarettes. This first unit that we're going to review is probably going to take the longest because it had been around the longest. I'm going to show you right now a three-piece unit, it is called. A three-piece unit is pretty much what started all off. The very first one, it was called a 901. It was around for quite a long time. Then we saw the changes in about 2007, 2008, and a lot of rapid changes in the last few years. So your basic electronic cigarette, when it came out, it was just like this piece that you have here. It's a three-piece unit. What I mean by three-piece unit is you have the cartridge, and the cartridge has the liquid. It's also called juice, e-juice, oil, some people might call it. But this is the what you do need for your electronic cigarette to work properly. It's the liquid that changes into a vapor form, and as it changes into vapor form, it gives you whatever flavor it might be, a throat sensation. Some people call it a throat hit, and it also has nicotine in it. You can get some without nicotine, but let's save that for another day in another video. So this would supply the liquid to the atomizer. Here's the atomizer. I'm going to take it off of this unit right here. It's pretty simple. It's pretty small. This is where the cartridge inserts in there, and hidden down in there is the atomizer itself that atomizes the liquid into vapor itself. Last but not least, the most important thing is your battery. The battery did, of course, give you the energy that was needed to operate the atomizer, which converted the liquid into vapor. So pretty simple system. You had three different parts that you're looking at. This was around for a very, very long time. Like I said, you didn't see too many changes. This product was pretty much in the Asian market for a very, very long time, and then it was into the European market. We really didn't see this come into the good old United States of America until about 2007, 2008. I mean, there was a couple of small ones, but it really started hitting mainstream there, and that's when I got into it. When I got into it, I actually got into this unit that you had right here. This is a 510 by Joyetech. Now, when these first came out, these were automatic batteries, and you commonly still see that on the marketplace right now. It's more frequently some of the disposables, the inexpensive ones that you find in gas stations, things of that nature. When people started this off, and I did too myself, I wanted something that didn't have a button. I wanted something that looked exactly like a cigarette, and that was one of those things that I had to overcome. And you yourself, you may overcome or decide just to stick with something that looks like a cigarette and does not have the button. Not having the button, what they had to do was right here where the atomizer went down into the battery. Here you'll notice that there's a small little circular ring at the very bottom. There would have been a punch through there that would have exposed a pressure plate, and that pressure plate, when it would be activated by your inhale, it would activate the energy and make sure that the atomizer started moving on and providing the vapor for you. There was a lot of difficulties with that, and there still is today in the industry as far as them getting gummed up or not working, as far as the liquid getting stuck inside there. Another thing in some of the units where vibrations, things of that would cause them to accidentally go off in your pocket, things of that nature. So there was some difficulties with those systems. The biggest one that was a large problem for many of us users was it had a limiter built in. That limiter would only permit you to inhale a certain length of time, a certain amount of times, then the system shut off on itself. It was put in there by the techs, and it was to protect the atomizer life from ever overheating. Well, that didn't work very well for a lot of us heavier smokers. Like, I smoked 2 packs a day for over 20 years. That didn't work for me. I was very lucky when I decided to pick up electronic cigarette that I got into this unit. This is by Joyetech. It is a 510 unit. It does have a button that you do notice there. This was key in it working for me. The secondary thing that was key was a workhorse of an atomizer. This really provided a great full vapor for me, throat sensation, everything that you have there. By not having the pressure plate in there and by having the button, you get to decide how long that you're going to inhale for. You do run the risk that you do run the risk that you can overheat your atomizer, but it was more important for us users to get that vapor and that throat sensation that we were looking at, and knowing that we may have to change our atomizers a little bit more often. So the pro to this was, for the size that it was, it worked extremely well. The cons I'm going to go into very quickly, and that is battery life. When you're dealing with small batteries, you're not going to have a lot of battery life. So the only way to counter that was to have quite a few batteries on hand. The other con with this system here is, like I said, you had the cartridge here. It does have a cotton fill there. You would commonly take your liquid and you would put a couple of drops in there and fill it on up. What we would find with these particular units here is that you'd have to top them off quite often. By often, I mean after about the length of a cigarette and a half, you have to top it off. Because what happens is that vapor starts declining, the vapor output, the throat sensation starts to decline. You have a lot of issues there. And then as it gets further and further away from the atomizer, you're running a risk of the atomizer overheating itself. Think of the atomizer, this heating element here, like an engine, and think of the liquid like oil. If an engine doesn't have oil, it's going to burn out pretty quickly. So that was your very first one that we were seeing. Of course, you had the addition of the button. That was a really great thing that a lot of people liked. Now, the address that was made for this battery issue was called the Ego battery. Joyetech brought out the Ego battery, and I'm pulling out one of those units right now. Here we have an Ego next to a 510 unit. The Ego really revolutionized the recent history of electronic cigarettes. You commonly see it in a lot of other makers and manufacturers, but Joyetech was the very first one to make that. It wasn't rocket science what they did. I'm going to take off right now what's called the atomizer cover. And that is going to reveal the atomizer and the cartridge. And as I hold these up to you, you're going to notice that they are exactly the same on your top end, just with that battery difference. But just by going with a slightly thicker battery, you had a huge difference that was actually going on. Here you're dealing with about 180 mAh. Now when I say mAh, that is how the industry rates the battery life and how long it lasts. If that seems confusing to you, just focus on the number itself, and don't get focused into the milliamps per hour that it stands for and all that. That can get very overwhelming. So here you have this guy here. You're looking at 180. By just jumping into this slight more thicker battery that you're looking at, you got into the 650 range. They then, of course, started making 900, 1000, all these other batteries that you had. So that was really interesting, and that solved that problem that you had for us users, where these you'd have to have quite a few different batteries. You'd have to replace, you'd have to recharge them throughout the day multiple times. It was a little bit disappointing once you got in the hang of it. In the beginning, we all wanted something this size, but very, very quickly, you're like, hey, you know what? I will move up on size if I can get a lot more battery life. So now we fixed that battery life issue that you're looking at. Your other one was the cartridge itself. Like I said, you had to top it off after about the length of a cigarette or so. That can really get difficult when you're driving a vehicle. There's so many situations where that's just not very convenient. So then what they did is they came out with what was called a tank system. So the tank system, here I'm going to pull one of these out. This is called the Ego C. What they did was they changed that cartridge into a tank cartridge, and here I have a tank cartridge, and it is filled with liquid. It's very easy to fill. All you simply do is, again, you take a bottle. Needle tip bottles are very handy for this. There is a hole that you see right here. You stick it on in there, you fill it on up. It's very, very easy to do. Now you're going to notice that the atomizer looks much different on this unit than this standard one that we were talking about. I'll pull that off, and I'll kind of show them to you together. And as you can see, this is what we call a open air or open atomizer system, and this is a tank system. I'm going to go one step further here, and I'm going to disassemble this to really show you the atomizer head itself. So this is the cover that holds the atomizer head on here, and I'm pulling out the atomizer head. I commonly call these heating elements, and that's a great way to kind of think about it, because that's what it does. It's your heating element. Now, as I bring this close on up to you, you're going to notice that it has like a piercing top that you have. That actually pierces right into that cartridge, and that's what allows that feed system. As that goes together, it hopefully keeps from leakage, things of that area. I get into this in different videos as far as which ones leak the least, which ones may have some problematic problems, but let's just stick to the history of e-cigs right now. So that kind of fixed that next issue that you're having, and that was really interesting with the Ego C, and it's called a tank system. So you had those tank systems. Now remember, through these three models that we were looking at, we are all referring to atomizers. So you always had an atomizer. One thing that I would like to note, and it is still very common in the marketplace right now, is a cartomizer. It might seem a bit confusing, but if you listen to the words carefully, it makes a lot of sense. Cart standing for cartridge, and miser standing for atomizer. So it was the combination of a atomizer and a cartridge. Now this, like I said, this is your traditional way where you have the atomizer here, and then the cartridge goes on top of it and it feeds down. When we did go into a cartomizer, I'm going to show you a cartomizer right now. Here we have one of these. The cartomizer, the atomizer is actually in the very middle, and then surrounding it all the way down from the top all the way to the bottom is that cotton polyfill. It allowed for a more even distribution of the liquid going to the atomizer. So that was really nice. A lot of people enjoyed that. You didn't have to top them off as much. And I'll actually pop off the little air, the little piece that you have on the top. I'm going to bring this close and you can see what I'm talking about. See how the cotton filling, the polyfill, goes all the way around it, and then you see the atomizer in the dead center. This was great, but the con with this particular unit is it took a long time to fill these up. You'd have to take a bottle, you'd put some liquid around, wait for a little bit, put some more liquid around, wait for a little bit. So this became a habit where you'd have to usually have 4 or 5 of them throughout the day, and it could take you 5 or 10 minutes to fill these on up. So that was a little bit of an issue. However, like I said, we're seeing this very, very commonly in the marketplace. You can see these on some of the leading different electronic cigarettes in some of the very large stores. You can even find the gas station versions. Here I have a gas station version right here. And I'm going to pull it out. This is a common thing that usually attracts us as e-cig users in the very beginning. And like I said, here you have a 2-piece unit. So this top is that cartomizer that we are talking about, and the bottom is an automatic e-cig. There's no button on there, anything like that. On these here, it is something to try. If you've found one of these and you've tried it and it tasted horrible or anything of that nature, I hope that this does not keep you from pursuing down the road of electronic cigarettes. Some of these are very inexpensive in their manufacturing. The liquid is subpar. There's a lot of issues with these particular units. But again, like I'm saying, this is what you're seeing in the marketplace, even right now, very, very commonly. Also, they like you to get these cartridges pre-filled and buy them over and over and over again. They make a lot of money that way, and I can see that. You know, it's very easy for them to do. So that kind of touched on the cartomizer. Let's get into something that's very recent and really taken over the industry, and that is a Clearomizer. Now, a Clearomizer fundamentally works slightly different than the atomizer does. So let's start just looking at them as heating elements. Okay. So now I'm going to show you a unit that has a Clearomizer to it. Now, Clearomizers, you can get them where you can see the actual insides. So like here we have a Clearomizer that does have a window all the way around. This particular unit here, this is made by Kanger. This is the EVOD. You really cannot go wrong when you're starting off with electronic cigarettes. If you're looking at Clearomizers, Kanger did a wonderful job with the Clearomizer version that you're looking at there. But let's stay on focus here. I tend to get off of focus sometimes, folks. I'm going to take a Clearomizer right now. Here's a larger one. And they're like these that you have right here. These 3 that I'm going to hold for you, these are bottom coil Clearomizers. They all work exactly the same. It's just aesthetics. Do you want more liquid or less liquid? Do you want to have a metal housing around there kind of hiding the colors of your liquid, or would you like it exposed so that you can easily see it? But getting into the Clearomizer itself, what happens is these unscrew. And as you unscrew this off, it reveals the heating element itself. Like I said, this is a bottom coil. I'll get into in a little bit your other model of the Clearomizer, which has a slightly different feed system. This is becoming very popular, and a lot of people like them, and I endorse this one highly because of the bottom feed system. So here you have the coil I'm going to, on this unit, it allows me to take the coil, the heating element, out of this unit that you have right here. And this is your heating element. These get replaced pretty commonly. They do burn out fairly quickly, but they're also inexpensive to replace. Now, as we get really close, right here is that wicking. That wicking is hidden within this. And one of the things to kind of think of between these two that you're looking at is you have a atomizer system that I was talking about. Think of this more of like a gas top stove. Think of a Clearomizer more of like an electric top stove. They both cook food, but they do it slightly differently, and you can get a little bit different results on your food. Hence, you can get different results on your e-liquid. Some people find that atomizers, they have a fuller array of the liquid that they're using, and some of the nuances with the flavors, where some people feel that that is muted a little bit with the Clearomizer systems. There are workarounds to that. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but this is just one of those things to know that you do have a Clearomizer. The really nice thing with the Clearomizer is very, very minimal leakage issues if you use these correctly, and they're very easy to use. That's why you're commonly seeing these on the marketplace right now. Like I said, you take this off, that's where your coil is to replace. That's very easy to do. Actually, filling one of these are pretty easy. You're going to notice a circular ring in the bottom there. That is actually your air hole. So you're not going to fill in the middle. You're actually going to fill around, and it is pretty easy to do. You would take a bottle, like I was saying, needle tip again becomes very handy to do this. And as you can see the needle that's in there right now, I would fill this on up, and I wouldn't pass that point, and that would fill up that Clearomizer. I put this piece back on there, I screw it on, I'm good to go. The liquid sits in there. It doesn't leak anywhere. Really nice. Pretty simple, easy systems. These, of course, go right on to Ego batteries. Like I said, this was the Kangaroo one that you're looking at. So now we're kind of getting back into a two-piece system, but like I said, it is a Clearomizer system. So this is your newest system that you had. Now, another progression that you're noticing with electronic cigarettes is most of these units ran at a 3.7 voltage. 3.7 voltage, a lot of people were playing around with the voltages. They found that they got a little bit more vapor, and they got a little bit more throat sensation by elevating their voltage. There are a lot of Ego style batteries that at the bottom they twist. As they twist and you twist them, you can change your voltage. So that's really neat that you can do that. However, accommodating those systems, the batteries start getting larger and larger and larger and larger. So the next step that was kind of made was a variable volt system. That is one of the common ones that it is called. Here I'm going to pull out the eVic. This is made by Joyetech. I'm going to turn this guy on that you had right here. Now this is just your battery unit that you have here, and then the top end controls the voltage itself. On this one, it's very easy to do. You'll notice that you have some numbers there. I'm going to change that down, and I'm going to control my voltage. By controlling your voltage, it does influence how the flavor feels, the throat sensation, everything like that. Normally, coming into electronic cigarette brand new, you don't want to touch one of these systems. I'm here to tell you, give them a chance. You may save yourself a lot of money instead of buying one of these smaller units that you have and then moving up into the Ego and then moving into one of these larger units. Those other units, by purchasing those, you've wasted a lot of your money when you didn't need to. It's very important that you find something that works for your habit, and a lot of that is influenced by how much you consume right now, whether you're only doing a few cigarettes a day, whether you're doing a pack a day, 2 packs a day, whatever that might be. Now these units, these variable volt units, they accept pretty much everything on the top end. So you literally could take this, like remember this was that very first 510 unit that I was talking about. It will get accepted by this unit, and I'll put it on there and I can use it. I can even take the top end of the Clearomizer that you're looking at, and I can just put that right on there. I can even use that Ego C that we are talking about. So it's really limitless of what you can put on the top end of these for your delivery system of your liquid, the Clearomizer or atomizer or whatever you might have. So that's really interesting, the way that those work. And yes, you can even put one of those cartomizers on the top of these. But here's something to be aware of. When you get into that where you're changing your voltage, there's limitations. Things that I tell people that I know with electronic cigarettes is try not to go over that 4.2 range. Like I said, this will tell you, and right now we're going to 4.7, 4.6. That 4.2 is kind of more of a sweet spot. Once you start going past that range, you have to get different resistance of your heating elements, and that's of course something that we get into a little bit later. Don't want to overwhelm you with that. So that's kind of the history of electronic cigarettes and where we are right now. We started off with traditional three-piece systems, worked very, very well. Then we saw pretty much the birth of the tank systems along with the cartomizer systems. Then finally we had the Clearomizer system, which is very common in the marketplace today. And now we're seeing these large units that are coming onto the scenes, which have a lot of hidden advantages to them. The last thing is, remember I was saying, folks, how we looked at this one and it had 180 mAh of your battery life, and then we moved into the 650 on the Ego. This particular unit that I'm holding has an upgraded battery within it, and it's set at 3,400 mAh. So that's very substantial, and that's very beneficial depending on what your habit is. So that's just the basic history of electronic cigarettes. I hope I didn't bore you. If you lasted all the way to the end, thank you very much. And now let's move on to, of course, the different types and the pros and cons of these different types. We're just going to kind of hit these different units that I kind of showed you. I'm going to show you the pro, I'm going to show you the con, and hopefully we can make that video a little bit quicker for you, huh?